paneurhythmy, ideas, music and movements, was brought to us by the master Plđ, who lived in Bulgaria between the years 1864 and 1944.
These are the words of the Master about paneurhythmy. Paneurhythmy is a vast science which will be taught and applied in its fullness in the future. Ordinary exercises may give good results, but negative ones as well. Systematic, well-grounded exercises like paneurhythmy always attain their goal, because they are based upon the profound knowledge of the human being. Man is a very complicated being who incorporates the energies of the plant and animal worlds. Today, even more sublime energies are beginning to influence him. All of these energies are harmonized through the paneurhythmic exercises. Man is, at one and the same time, both the center and the transformer of the solar and earthly energies. And so, exercises based on the profound knowledge of the human being and the universe and their relationship are also methods of transformation of energies. From this point of view, they are not merely an entertainment or a mechanically performed physical training. They are a necessity of life, as much as taking meals and breathing. Each movement has its own intrinsic meaning. All of the exercises, when performed as a whole, are a continuous process of the consciousness, a path to perfection. The main idea which should focus our attention whenever we perform paneurhythmy is the idea of God, the Great One, the Eternal, the Supreme Intelligence. The fundamental themes of paneurhythmy are nature, the rising sun, awakening of the soul. We perform the exercises in the way they are performed in the invisible world. They have not been conceived here. They have been brought down from above. In these exercises, the physical, spiritual, and divine worlds are interrelated. There is an interchange of energy from one world to the other. While performing paneurhythmy, you should not look around and think about how others are performing. Be absorbed in your own performance instead. Your thought should be in your arms and legs, in all your cells. Thought and feeling should participate in every movement and penetrate every cell. Study the exercises step by step that you may learn to perform them well. Perform them gracefully, and by no means break and cut your movements. A lot of energy is lost in abrupt movements. They have completely different character. The rhythm should be correct. One should first step on the toes and then on the heels. If you step on your heels first, stress will be put on the spinal cord. When one steps on one foot or the other during the paneurhythmic movements, all chakras are stimulated and an exchange takes place between the positive and negative flows of energy, between the creative and constructive forces. The arms and the legs are two opposite poles, and they play a very important role. The person who does not know how to move his arms and legs will achieve little. The head is between the positive and negative poles. It is the centre. When you move your arms correctly, you will be able to relate to the human world. When you move your legs correctly, you will be able to relate to the animal world. When you correctly move your spine and the muscles which are attached to it, you will be able to relate to the plant world, and you'll be able to draw sap from there. When you are able to regulate the energy which passes through your legs, your relationship to the earth will be re-established, because the energy transmitted through your legs is connected with the center of the earth. Before, no correct interrelation between your energy and those of the earth existed.
The master introduced paneurhythmy gradually in parts, beginning with the first 10 exercises in 1934, then the whole paneurhythmy and the pentagram until 1938, and finally the rays of the sun in 1942. There is no doubt that the master introduced modifications during the process of teaching and performing the paneurhythmic exercises. For example, initially, the first exercise, Awakening, was shown with the palms turned upward, when the arms open and unfold in a semicircle to the horizontal position. Sometime later, the master instructed that it should be performed with the palms turned downward, the way it is performed today. Unfortunately, modifications were also made after the master's departure from the physical world. Changes are still being made by some people today. In our presentation, we strive to maintain the initial integrity of paneurhythmy in accordance to those instructions given by the master. The first 10 exercises from awakening to flying represent a single entity. The music that accompanies them is played without pause, and so the movements of the dancers are continuous as well. The consideration of these exercises as a whole removes the apparent contradictions in their performance. For example, the initial movements of the unfolding of the hands in some exercises coincides with the left foot, not with the right one. Symmetry is fundamental to integrity. Symmetry exists throughout the paneurhythmy, for example, in the actions of the right and the left part of the body, as in the exercise Beautiful Day. Symmetry exists in the movements of the right and the left foot in the exercise Step by Step. Here, every second sequence begins with the left foot. The crowning exercise Aum is performed 4 times, leading twice with the right foot and twice with the left. Because the first 10 exercises are a single whole, it is not a problem that sometimes the initial movement of the arms coincides with the left foot stepping forward. Why should we be confused, for example, when the blowing out in exercise 9, purification, begins with the left foot stepping forward? It is the left foot that signifies the feminine, constructive principle, the principle of the heart. Purity, which is of the heart, is appropriately expressed through the left side of the body and the left leg. In the archive film from the time of the Master, the blowing out movement of purification is performed while stepping forward with the left foot.
These are the words of the Master. Now you should begin to work from below, that is to say, from the physical world, and move upwards. You need to perform these exercises in order to be healthy. Paneurhythmy brings harmony and knowledge. With paneurhythmy, man gradually attains softness and gentleness. If you perform the paneurhythmic exercises correctly, all of the positive forces of nature will pass through you, and God's love will unite you in one infinite, universal circle. If you perform the exercises incorrectly, the power of this tool will be directed against the Great One, God, and thus against yourself.
The first exercise, awakening, symbolizes the two main principles and their alternation, receiving and giving, concentrating and expressing oneself outwardly. Reconciliation. In describing this sequence, the main sources, a book entitled Paneurhythmy, published in 1938, and the unpublished book of the Four Sisters, agree that the starting position of the hands is in front of the chest, with fingers together facing forward and palms downward. Obviously, in the course of time, the position of the palms has changed, and now it is being performed with the hands in front of the chest, with both palms touching and fingers pointing upward. We accept the first description to be correct, with fingers pointing forward. Giving symbolizes the correct exchange between the internal and external worlds, between ourselves and the energies of the living nature. That which man receives from nature should be incorporated and given out again. This is the principle of giving upon which the coming culture is based. Ascending. Elevation. In the two exercises, ascending and elevation, mistakes are sometimes made in the movement of the arms. The 1938 text describes the movement like this: the arms extended forward and upward vertically with the palms forward. The Four Sisters describe it this way: almost upright. Jarmila Menslova, who was one of the Four Sisters, in her book, published in Paris in 1984, describes the position as at an angle of 67.5 degrees, which is close to almost upright. Nowadays, some teachers show the exercise with arms extended forward and upward at an angle of 45 degrees. Having in mind that the importance of this position of the arms was mentioned repeatedly by the master. We accept the extending of the arm almost upright. Let's see now the transitory movements between the fourth and the fifth exercises. Opening. Liberation. This powerful gesture, in which both hands swing open to the sides, symbolizes breaking of obstacles and tearing of unnatural ties, the breaking away from all old. As we have previously stated, the unfolding of the arms begins simultaneously with the left foot stepping forward. At the end of this exercise, the arms are open to the sides. This is the starting position for the next exercise. Clapping. The idea of this exercise is to express the triumph of freedom. Clapping with the hands begins simultaneously with the right foot stepping forward. At the end of the last bar, both hands are brought together towards the front of the face. Purification. The blowing out and unfoldment of the arms expresses the sowing of the divine word and its introducing into life. The exercise begins with the left foot stepping forward. Flying. The wave-like movements of the arms as they are held to the sides represent the principle of light and knowledge. and the aspiration of man towards spiritual upliftment. The exercise begins with the left foot stepping forward. Once again, we would like to remind you that these first 10 exercises are a single entity and are performed without interruption in the music or movements. Evera. A frequently made mistake in the performance of Evera is that some dancers do not alternately turn their faces and then backs to the center of the circle. They only move their arms to the left or to the right side of the body. This movement, which is correct later in the exercise conquering, is incorrect here. There is a discrepancy between the description given in both the 1938 text and the Four Sisters work, and that given in some recent books and currently practiced. We refer to the position of the arms at the moment when they rise to an angle of 45 degrees. The original texts agree that one arm is fully extended while the other one is slightly bent. This is the arm which previously was in front of the chest. Some of the modern descriptions suggest that both hands be equally extended. Jumping. While bending down, the arms remain stretched in one line with the back until they reach the forward horizontal position. Then the back remains motionless while the arms swing back to a horizontal position. A slight bending in the knees then prepares for the jump into the air. After the last jump, the arms remain in the same position until the music stops. Then they return to the sides of the body. Weaving. At the starting position, those in the outer circle should take one step forward so that they are positioned ahead of the dancers in the inner circle. When crossing, the outer dancer always passes in front of the inner. In this way, the inner partner is always behind the outer, regardless of the change in position. At the end of this exercise, the partners will find their positions reversed and should remain in these new positions for the remainder of the paneurhythmy. The exercise begins with arms folded horizontally at the elbows, with the middle fingers just touching and palms facing downward. Whenever the arms are folded in front of the chest, the middle fingers should be touching. Think. This exercise expresses our connection with the mental world and the application of right thinking in life. The master gave the lyrics for only 3 of the exercises: Think, Aum, and the Rising Sun. And these are the central exercises in paneurhythmy. The rest of the text was written by Olga Slavcheva as requested by the master. The lyrics for the Rays of the Sun were written by Vesela Nestorova, also in accordance with the master's request. Aum.
These are the words of the Master about Aum. You should keep this exercise sacred within yourselves. When a person sings a sacred song, he needs to open up his soul like a flower to the light, that he may become innocent and carefree, like a child who has no fear of his environment. Should a person achieve such a state, he will be able to become one with the beings of the intelligent world. Only then will he come to know what music is, what singing is, what science is. A current of energy exists which emanates from the sun and passes through the center of the earth. Another current emanates from the earth and passes through the sun. When we extend one arm upwards at an angle of 45 degrees, we receive the divine through it. Through the leg on which we are supported, we receive the energies of the earth. Through the arm and the leg, which are extended downwards and back at an angle of 45 degrees, we cast off into the earth all accumulated energy which is impure, unprocessed, and disharmonious. The sequential extending of the arms forwards and up, accompanied by the lifting of the rear foot, represents the flight of the human spirit, the eternal striving towards heaven's gate.
The melody is played 4 times in succession. With the first and the third, the beginning of the melody coincides with the right foot stepping forward. With the second and the fourth, with the left foot. A frequent mistake is that some dancers do not lift from the ground the foot which is behind. Others, on the contrary, after they lift the foot from the ground, lift the whole body on the toe of the other foot as well. This element was not given by the master and is not mentioned in any original text. Only the foot which is behind is lifted slightly. The heel of the forward foot always remains in contact with the ground. The Rising Sun. The starting position of the hands is in front of the chest, not on the chest. Palms down, fingers slightly bent and touching. The movement of the arms in the first sequence of this exercise should be continuous, without any interruption between the intermediate phases. When the first sequence is repeated, the movement will begin with the left foot stepping forward. We should remember that the starting position of the hands is with fingers just touching. When the hands come back together at the end of the third phase, the fingers should meet again. They remain touching during the repetition of the first phase, Изгрява слънцето, Behold the Rising Sun, when the hands move up to form again an arch above the head. Beginning with the starting position, the arms should move at such a speed that they reach the top position exactly at the moment when the music for the next movement begins. That is the opening of the arms in a descending semicircle until horizontal position. If one does not coordinate the speed of the movement and the tempo of the music, the whole first part will be broken into 3 movements of the arms, interrupted by 2 motionless positions. The master speaks about graceful movements in paneurhythmy. That is why one should not allow any interruptions. Really, the movement of the sun is continuous, not interrupted. That is why one should match one's movements seamlessly with the music. The square. According to both the 1938 Paneurhythmy book and the Four Sisters work, the starting position of the hands is in front of the chest, with fingers touching. After the arms spread out horizontally to the sides, they then return to the starting position. This means that the middle fingers should again touch. Not all dancers do this, maybe because it requires more attention and precision. Yet, this is the purpose of the exercises, to develop concentration, mindfulness and precision, to pay attention to the details and become masters of ourselves. The master very often pointed the importance of the least things. The hands placed horizontally in front of the chest are spread out and folded again in two ways. First, while standing in place and alternately extending each foot to the side, the arms move out in horizontal arcs. Secondly, while one is stepping 8 paces forward, the hands move so as to describe two vertical semicircles. Beauty.
These are the words of the Master. Some people place their hands in front of the body loosely. This is an animal state. The exercises should be performed with concentration, with firm yet fluid movements to the outstretched limbs. This is not a ballet or any other dance. One's frame of mind should always be to bless. The fingers of the hand should not be spread apart, but held together. The arm should be extended at an angle of 45 degrees, and the mind focused. The movement begins by extending the arm first forward horizontally, then it is raised up. The front part, the hand, symbolizes the divine world, the middle part, the spiritual world, and the base, the material world. Project your mind into your arm as you move it.
Beauty begins with the hands at the sides and facing the general direction of movement. One needs to know that the hand is then extended forward and up to an angle of 45 degrees. Agility. In this exercise, there is a movement which is not well defined. Should both hands touch after their undulating movements to the sides at the crossing steps? And before turning around to the opposite side. The 1938 book states that the fingers of the hand, which are opposite to the movement, grasp slightly the fingers of the hand, which fingers coincide with the direction of the movement. In this way, this movement is currently taught in workshops in Bulgaria. On the other hand, the four sisters, one of whom, Jarmila Menslova, was entrusted by the master to present correctly the movements of paneurhythmy, described the movement of the hands as parallel to the sides and back, opposite to the general direction of the movement, with no touching of each other. The latter description is documented in the archive film in which the master himself performs agility not touching both hands, but with undulating movements of the arms back, parallel to each other. The group demonstrating the exercise in the same archive film performs it in the same way. For the time being, the correct form is unclear. We accept the second way of performance, parallel arms sideways without touching, as it was performed by the master himself. conquering. It is a frequent mistake of some dancers to turn the body right or left together with the arms, as is done in the exercise Evera. In conquering, the torso remains facing forward, while the arms are swinging to the right or left. Note a very important detail given by the four sisters. When the arms move to the side and backward, the free leg is lifted high and bent at the knee, with toes pointing downwards to form a straight line from knee to toes. The joy of the earth. The arms are swung softly in sweeping arcs to express the joy in receiving God's bounty. These bounties are received in accordance with the magnetic or feminine principle. Acquaintance. When the partners hold hands, they need to remember the following. The right palm of each partner is placed over the left palm of the other. There are some differences in the performance of this exercise similar to the exercise agility. When the partners are back to back, the arms of each of them are bent at the elbows with the hands in front of the chest. The hand, with fingers pointing toward the direction of the movement, is with its palm downward, while the hand with fingers pointing opposite to the movement is with its palm upward and slightly grasping the fingers of the other hand. This is the way the exercise is taught currently in workshops in Bulgaria. The description in the 1938 book and the Four Sisters text. Some dancers, however, perform this part of the exercise differently. After the horizontal swinging, they do not bring their hands together to touch them, but swing them to the side and backwards parallel to each other, as it is done in the exercise agility. We can find no support for this practice. Beautiful day. These movements strengthen and magnetize the nervous system and stimulate the will. The exercise is a progression of 4 figures. Each sequence incorporates those elements which were developed in the previous one. In the second sequence, the arms should be extended at an angle of 45 degrees. During the springing movement of the leg, the other leg is extended forward with the knee straight and draws close to the ground and could even touch it. Although a folding of the knee does occur in another exercise, the rays of the sun, in the exercise Beautiful Day, the lifted leg is extended. Although the 1938 text describes a slight folding in the knee, the extended leg is in accordance with both Four Sisters' text and with the archive film of the Master. In the third and the fourth sequence, one is again reminded to hold the right hand over his partner's left. It is essential in the fourth figure that the arm should describe a full arc on the way up and down. How happy we are. The exercise is performed to a melody taken from the Bulgarian folk dance known as Rachenica. Bulgarian folk songs and dances originated from sacred rituals in the past, but later became ordinary circle dancing or hora. The exercise should be danced with a flexible springing step, but without hopping. Some dancers, at the moment when their hands move backwards, lean forward and bend down their heads. This is never described and is superfluous. The torso remains upright at all times. Step by step. Early in the morning. The exercise consists of 3 sequences. A common mistake is made in the second sequence, when the swinging motion is made while standing in one place, forwards on toes and backwards on heels. Some dancers bend forward and lower their head. This is not correct. One should remain upright throughout the swinging. Another mistake is sometimes made at the beginning of the third sequence. It begins with 4 steps forward with hands motionless on the waist. Some dancers stretch their hands forward and then move them back in the way it is done in the successive movements of the exercise. It is important for the hands to be motionless on the waist during the first 4 steps of the third sequence. It is described in this way in the 1938 paneurhythmy text. And once again, a very important point. The third sequence begins with 4 steps forward with hands motionless on the waist. Breathing. In all other exercises, singing is optional. You may sing or not. This exercise, however, should be accompanied by singing. Of course, you should sing in a low voice, so as not to bother the dancers near to you. Providence. When raising the hands from the sides up over the head with fingers touching, one says, "May God's peace be with us. May God's joy and gladness arise in our hearts." Accompanied by the following movement, the hands are slowly brought down towards the top of the head. The hands then part, and we continue slowly to pass our palms over ourselves. On this final movement, called bathing in the light, there appear certain variations. Some touch the head with their fingers, others do not. One of the closest disciples, Boyan Boev, reports that the master recommended a slight touching of the top of the head only for a moment to feed the crown chakra. Rays of the sun. This part of paneurhythmy was the last to be given in 1942. It consists of 10 figures. The music uses motifs from Bulgarian folk songs. The movements should be flexible and springing, but without hopping. The starting position is: the dancers are lined up in pairs. There are 6 pairs in each radius sun ray. These columns are situated radially and symmetrically, with the dancers facing the center of the circle where the musicians are. There are 12 rays and an outer circle around the rays. If there are not enough dancers, each ray may contain as few as 3 pairs, and in the outer circle there may be only 1 pair against each ray. Some special elements in the sequence are: at the beginning of the first advancing movement, the first figure, the hands are swinging forward and upward at an angle of 45 degrees. When this motion begins down from the right side and moving up slightly to the left, there is a clapping with the palms. When the motion begins down from the left side and moving up slightly to the right, there is only a push, but no clapping. In the first, second and third retreating movements, the feet move in semicircles and are placed one behind the other. In the third sequence, advancing, the dancer is springing on one leg while the other one is extended forward and is touching the ground slightly as a result of this springing. This leg is slightly bent in the knee, not straight as it was in exercise 23, Beautiful Day. When the partners go around each other, one should know that first the left partner steps around the right one. The latter remains in place. The second time, it is the left partner who remains in place, while the right partner steps around him. The third time, they are taking steps around each other. On this third circling, when both are moving in the front part of the circle, the right partner takes the outer part of the circle. At the back on the circling, the left partner takes the outer path. So the movements of the partners become symmetrical and equivalent. It's a frequent mistake with some partners that when turning around each other, they do not move in a circle, but rather in a form of a figure 8. Some even move in a line, that is, they step aside and return to their place in the same way. This mistake puts a dancer in the way of his partner and makes it difficult to perform the exercise correctly. In recent practice in Bulgaria, when the partners circle alternately around each other, the one on the spot makes a pace forward at the end of the springing movement, while the other partner is turning around him. In the 1938 book on paneurhythmy, it is said that the foot returns to the initial spot. This means that this stepping forward is not correct. When we're singing Rai, 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 The right hand is clapping on the left one. The right hand is the more active one according to the 1938 book on paneurhythmy. For the song Kajimi Kajimi, the arms are folded in front of the chest with the palms down, not toward the chest or on the chest. The opening and closing of the hands begins with the right hand on top of the left. Then the hands alternate each time until the end. When Tvoite dumi, dve, is sung, the motions are the same but a little bit slower. The movement in the song Tuirai resembles flight and consists of 5 slow wave-like motions with the hands. The tremor with the hands at the end seems to be a later introduced improvisation, which is incorrect and is not mentioned in any of the original texts. Pentagram. The pentagram is the most complicated sequence. It is performed by 10 persons. The best position for an unexperienced dancer is in the second row of the ray, behind a more experienced partner. The master advised that new dancers should first watch those dancing from the side, then be trained to perform the exercises, and only after they had learned to do them, they may enter the circle. Because the performance of paneurhythmy is a sacred act and not a pleasant and entertaining dance, all the dancers should be absolutely concentrated, diligent and reverential. Entering and leaving the circle, speaking or doing irrelevant things during the paneurhythmy exercises are inappropriate.
These are the words of the Master. The pentagram is a symbol of the 5 virtues and the 5 great principles: love, wisdom, truth, justice and virtue. Through the point of a virtue, one can progress. These are the 5 qualities which one should develop in oneself in order to become perfect. The pentagram is a source of light, of dynamic and miraculous power. It should never be placed with the point downward, which means descending, but always with the point upward, which means ascending, aspiration towards God. The pentagram looks somewhat like a human body, with the legs apart and the hands stretched aside. The head is truth, the right leg is justice, the right arm is wisdom, the left leg is virtue, and the left arm is love. Each of the 5 principles has a corresponding colour. Light blue corresponds to the point of the pentagram where truth is. Bright pink corresponds to the position of love and represents the heart and lungs. Bright yellow corresponds to the position of wisdom and represents the mind. Light green corresponds to the position of justice and represents the gallbladder and liver. The colour of ripe golden wheat corresponds to the position of virtue and represents the legs and the whole body.
During the performance of the pentagram, each participant successively occupies each point of pentagram, interacts with each of the corresponding virtues, and through strong and concentrated thought absorbs them. That is why one should be mindful and perform the moments correctly. Only the musicians and eventually singing in a low voice should be heard. The movements for turning the ray into a circle forming the pentagram may be difficult for some performers. Turning the straight row into a circle takes place as different pairs move along different arcs. The inner pairs, the second and the fourth ones, which symbolize the legs, move along the shortest distance. They take only 8 steps forward and stop in place. The outer pairs, the first and the fifth ones, which symbolize the arms, take 8 additional steps, total of 16, and stop in place. The middle pair, the third one, which symbolizes the head, takes 8 more steps, a total of 24 steps, and without stopping begins turning around on the spot. The dancers of this pair turn to the right 180 degrees and end up facing the opposite direction of the general movement toward the center of the newly formed circle. Simultaneously with the turning of the head, the other pairs turn to this center as well. All those in the inner part, left leg and left arm, turn right. At the same time, all those in the periphery, right leg and right arm, turn left. Then comes the exchange of the partners. This may be the essential part of the exercise because movement along the lines of the pentagram symbolizes the path of the disciple. Every participant goes along this path by himself, not in a pair. Performing the exercise 5 times, each participant visits successively the 5 points, the 5 great virtues. When the pentagram is formed, all the participants are turned with their faces to its center with their partners behind. The inside performer from each pair moves to the left, passing one couple and then replacing the outer performer in the next couple. The movement to this place is made not in line but in an arc curved outwardly. The moment the first or the inner partner of the pair starts to move, the partner who was behind him immediately takes 1 step forward and takes his place in the inner circle. This exchange is repeated once again. In this way, the members of the original couples come together again. Then comes the turning of all the pairs in the direction of the movement of the large circle. The new head turns right 180 degrees and the outer pairs, new right arm and right leg, turn right too. The inner pairs, new left arm and left leg, turn left until all the dancers face in the direction of the movement of the large circle. At last, each small circle pentagram unfolds into a straight line. Here, the longest distance is walked by the legs. The arms walk a shorter distance and the head stays on the spot, waiting for the others to line up with it. In this sequence, legs take the inner places between head and arms. Then all dancers move like a ray while making circle-like motions with their arms. The movement of each ray is along a radius of the circle, in the center of which are the musicians. To achieve this, all the participants should often visually check their alignment with each other. Some common mistakes are: those dancing in the inner part near to the orchestra take long paces, and as a result, the participants in the periphery cannot keep the ray lined up and well directed. Therefore, those in the center should often look to the periphery. Some participants do not look at the others, and thus break the ray. Some participants, when in the middle position of head and turning in order to line up the ray after the performance of the pentagram, raise a hand to show that they are the head. This motion is not necessary and disturbs the concentration and reverential quality of the performance. At the end, after the final movements of the pentagram, the participants greet each other by shaking hands and wishing a bright day.
Paneurhythmy is a great tool. It depends on you where and to whom you direct it. Practicing it will result in peace and harmony, not only among you, but in the world as well. The principles of paneurhythmy are inspirational for society. The introduction of paneurhythmy into schools and society will result in a totally new generation, physically healthy and spiritually fit for divine work. The exercises are an entrance to the divine world. One still cannot comprehend their importance. The exercises play a very important part in making a person younger. If you do them well and correctly, at least the wrinkles on your face will disappear. That is why I tell you to learn the exercises well. Through paneurhythmy, thought is connected with music and movements. If all people practiced paneurhythmy every morning consciously, no evil would come to them, and they would never be ill. We perform paneurhythmy to get in touch with the invisible assistance from all worlds and to make our path easier. Paneurhythmy is a great power which will uplift the world. The great souls will implant the wild existence with the graft of love. Thus engrafted, the world will attain new light and new aspirations, from involution toward evolution, from constant wars toward endless peace, from human hatred toward divine love, from egoism toward altruism. The movements of paneurhythmy are imbued with intelligence. They are preparatory movements. They have a miraculous power and influence the entire world, not only the individual. These movements are taken from nature, from the entire universe, and are in harmony with the cosmic rhythm.
The film follows primarily the words and instructions of the master Beinsa Duno and is in accordance with the following books: Paneurhythmy, 1947, unpublished book of the four sisters Jarmila Menslova, Maria Tudorova, Elena Andreeva, and Katya Griva. Paneurhythmy, 1938, Sofia. The text of the film contains the words of the master and explanations taken from the mentioned books together with additional explanations. The performers of the exercises are taught by Ina Dojnova. To learn the paneurhythmy exercises, it is recommended that the video be used together with the following texts: The Circle of Sacred Dance by David Lorimer, 1991. Paneurhythmy by Ernestina Staleva and Antoaneta Kruszewska. The paneurhythmy exercises are presented by Iglika and Javor Stoyanovs. The authors of the film are grateful to all those who took part in its production.